Hello and welcome to Colleague 7 Sprint Review for 19.07.02. This will cover the work undertaken between the 9th of July to the 22nd of July. Our sprint goal for this sprint has been to ensure that the necessary merge field options are made available when sending an email to a candidate or contact from a requirement. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint, we've been able to introduce candidate and contact merge field options when sending emails from requirements. Previously, when creating emails on requirements for generic emails and rejection emails, the merge codes which were available were purely from the requirement. This has now been updated to include candidate and contact information, and this includes an update to the templates area with a new scope for requirement candidates. I'll give a demo on this shortly. We've delivered the ability to generate an invoice record within the back office area. We've added the company tax code and VAT number to the address record to support multiple registered offices. We've set up the ability to create a task from another user and to view other users' tasks, provided you have the necessary permissions in place to authorize this. I'll give a demo on this shortly. We've added a notes column to the task area for generic notes. We've introduced a setting that will enable or disable showing the candidate details automatically when selected on the Candidates tab of a requirement. And we've updated the user record in admin so there is a yes/no field which authorizes whether the user is allowing for their diary and tasks to be accessed by others. We'll now go for a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so the first thing to go through is the update that was made in relation to the merge field options that are available from the Candidates tab of a requirement. So previously, if you wanted to, you can obviously still and always have been able to select these records and either run rejection options or from here run an email option to the candidate. So if you wanted to email all candidates that perhaps you'd longlisted, shortlisted, or follow up in regards to interviews or sent from this area, you had the option to email the candidate. But with regards to the available merge fields, those merge fields were limited to just be merge fields in relation to the requirement, which obviously isn't any good in terms of being able to reference the candidate's first name and details in relation to that candidate. What we've done now is essentially update the merge field list option now, so it includes all of the candidate and contact information in relation to that that candidate, and also the contact associated with the requirement, and also the requirement info is in there as well. We've also updated the template area as well to include a requirement candidate option. So if you wanted to, as an example, I've got an example template here, and this template is literally just a list of all of the merge fields that are available. But if I hit preview there on that, you can see that all of those merge fields are coming through in relation to the candidate, the contact, and the requirement. They're all as part of that template. So what we have now really is the means to be able to send emails from the requirement to the candidate and to send it as if you were against the candidate record, as you'd need to be to reference all of their merge fields. And that's the same as well if you were doing a rejection email. So if you wanted to send a rejection email and you just put test there on that, and we'll say that we'll send it to a candidate. The merge field options that are available are, as mentioned, they contain all of the candidate and contact information there. Again, just if you need to reference anything in the email that you're sending with regards to those merge fields. So you have everything now that needed in respect to that. If I go to the admin area quickly and go into the templates area, with regards to the templates that you can create now, the type obviously is going to be against email. The scope is requirement candidate, and that will allow you to the scope of any sort of information in relation to the requirement, the contact, the candidate. They're all going to be included as part of that scope of requirement candidate. So that's the key update that we made with regards to requirement candidates and sending emails in this sprint. Okay, so with regards to tasks, there are several updates to go through in this sprint review, namely around there now being the ability to be able to create tasks for other users and to view other users' tasks as well, as the main component. But as part of that, we've put in place a series of user group permissions and settings to enable who can and who can't do that. And as well as that, there's an element of configuration required in Outlook per user that needs to be known as part of this setup as well. So if I just go through it step by step, but to begin with, obviously within the tasks area in Colleague, the slight change here is that we've now got this user drop down option that's there, and on the basis of this being set up as you need it to be, you'll obviously have the option to be able to select other users, and then obviously in turn that will bring through their tasks that are obviously against their account in terms of what they're working on. But if I go through it step by step in terms of how this is set up, within the admin area under user group permissions, what we have now are two new settings. One is to create a task against another user within the team, and the other one is to create a task against any user within the team. So if you want to have it so that you can view and create tasks for only users within a team, so if you want to set it up so that users within a certain team can only view and share each other's tasks, create tasks for each other, then that's all possible using that setting. But if you want to freely just have it so that anyone can view or create tasks for any user in the system, you can obviously have that user group privilege as well. And obviously the team reference here in terms of knowing what team that user is part of is obviously going to be looking at the team structures that you've set up in the system with regards to here. So it depends on the architecture that you've set up with regards to your teams as to how that would function. But what we've also implemented as well, just to take it down to an even more kind of granular level, is an ability for, if I go to my user record on here, is an ability to be able to set the with not you're going to share your diary and tasks on a per user level. So obviously we've had user group permissions which we've just gone through, but if you want to specifically target certain users to say that person is not to have their diary or tasks shared, then you can do that. And this is obviously if you're in a situation we've got perhaps a flat structure, but the director's diaries and tasks are not to be shared, then you can set that up by obviously having this setting set to no. By default, it will be set to yes, and everything is managed through the user group permissions. But we want to offer that extra kind of granular user level option as well to define whether or not diaries and tasks are shared. So with those two settings applied and with that full access given, there are two other components that need to be understood. One is that following the upgrade, the user would need to have logged into Colleague at least once. They don't have to be logged into Colleague for you to be able to view their tasks, but they would have had to have logged into Colleague at least once. And in that process of them logging in, we'll have a process in the background which is tracking and finding their task folder ID, which is what's needed to basically be able to go and view their tasks. So once you've done that once, logging after the upgrade, that would mean you'll then be included within the list of users that can be viewed. As well as that, there's one other element as well, and that is within Outlook itself, under the tasks area, on the selection of tasks, if you go to folder permissions, the permission level of default needs to be set to editor. So it's giving the rights for others to be able to view your tasks and create items for you. So that's another component that needs to be done as well on a per user basis against their Outlook account. I mean, once it's done, it's done, and then you'd have to worry about it. But to be able to get it all working in a manner that you would want it to, which is be able to just freely switch between different users, then you have to go through that process of just making sure everyone's Outlook is set up as it needs to be. With regards to, if perhaps a user hasn't set up their tasks, what you're going to get is them appearing in this list because you've got the rights to be able to view other users, you've got the rights to be able to select that person because they've logged into the system and that the folder ID is known. But if they haven't shared out their tasks, you're going to see this message, which is failed to get Outlook tasks. This may be due to the user's Outlook tasks folder not being shared, and that's basically them not within this area, not allowing for that permission for their Outlook tasks to be shared out. So that's just something that's important to note with regards to this feature, that there needs to be that sharing implemented on the user side against their Outlook account. But once it's done, and then you can move on from there. But from that, obviously users are available as part of that drop down, and then when you add a new task as well on anywhere in the system, you've got that user drop down that's available there, and you could just select different users, and everything else is just the same in terms of selecting the user and creating the task. Everything else is just the same. And then that task will obviously go into that user's record. A history is created against the linked record, and everything works as it should. So that's the key update that's been made there with regards to tasks. Staying with tasks, the other element to cover is the notes column that's been added to the tasks table, and that's been added as a visual aid for you to briefly track your progress in relation to that task, perhaps as a prompt to remember something in specific in relation to it as you're working through your task. So that this works in the same way as the SpecCV table, and that you've got a pencil icon here on this side. You can click on that, it will prompt down a little window. You can enter in a note. You can either press enter or press OK, and then you'll see that note just appear on that side there. And that just means that as you're working through your tasks, obviously if you want to edit your tasks in terms of the actual task subject or the task body in relation to the work, then obviously you've got the means to be able to select the task and edit it thoroughly. But if you just want to make a quick update in relation to perhaps try again tomorrow or something of that nature, where you just want to give yourself a little visual prompt in relation to that task, you can now do that using these pencil icons that are available, and they work in the same way in that the task the tooltip to the pencil icon becomes the notes once it contains some text. Otherwise it will just advise add notes as the tooltip when you mouse over the pencil icon. But that's a minor update that we made there. Just a minor UI update, but worth covering all the same, and that's that we now have a setting which dictates whether or not the candidate details against a requirement appear automatically. So at the moment, if you were to select a candidate here that's against this requirement, you'll get a show candidate details option, which is here, and on selection of that, it will give you the starting salary, pay rates, the salary option, pay rate, charge rates, any notes that you may have be holding, and some history in relation to that candidate associated with the requirement. But obviously that's only available on the basis that you click that link. For some clients, they would like that to appear automatically whenever you select a candidate. It would come down automatically. So that's what we've done. So in the user settings, there's now this option here under the requirement section. When clicking a candidate in requirement candidates table, show candidate details. So if we set that to yes, and then if we refresh this requirement record, what we'll see is the new setting or the updated setting come into effect, and that will mean that basically whenever you're on the candidates tab and you're selecting a candidate, the candidate details will come down automatically, and if you select it again, it will hide. So it will work in that way rather than the other way before. So the default behavior is still that on selection of, it will prompt that to appear. But if you want it to just come down automatically or just appear that way, and then when you click either records, it will just update the information that's held in that pass through, then it can work that way now on the basis of using that setting. So it's just a minor update we made there. The last point to cover is just an update on where we are with the back office area. The back office option will be made available to select users based on the user group permission that's currently not available when it's ready. The envisage is that it would be accessible off this left navigation as back office. You'll then see this window, which is obviously a list of all sales invoice based activity options that you can do, and then you've got another row for payment based activity there. From the generate invoices section, that will list all of the timesheets, permanent placements, charges that you have on the system that have not been invoiced against against the system. You've got an option to sort by owning company if you have multiple owning companies in relation to your system. If you want to sort by type, you can do so there by selecting type. If you want to view by currency, you can obviously view by currency, and invoice method is also, or invoice frequency, sorry, is also there as well for the invoice frequencies that have been referenced in the back office tab of the placements. So on the basis of that, what you're able to then do is select the records that you wish to invoice, and you've got an option here of saying generate invoice. And from there you can obviously specify the invoice dates, the default nominal, and whether or not you wish to create expense invoices as part of this. So if you are obviously dealing with timesheets, you could have expense records that are associated there, and you need to have associated expense invoices in partnership with them. So on the basis of pressing OK there, going back, we've got a list invoices section now, and if I clear that down, this essentially contains invoices that have been generated within the system and essentially are ready to be printed. So these are our invoices that are created from the placements and timesheets and charges that have been raised in the system, and gives an idea of what to expect. You can obviously shortlist by specific invoice dates, and filter by specific invoice dates and also by currency, and we'll also added in an option to filter by specific company if you want to view only invoices that have been generated for a specific company from the system. We've got an undo invoice option as well that we're going to be working on as part of the next sprint, and then we move on to printing the invoice in terms of at that point generating the templated document method in which you can obviously then have an invoice generated from the system in a Word format, and obviously containing all of the details in relation to the invoice there. So printing is going to be not as part of the next sprint, but the sprint after. Undo invoicing and finalizing this area is what we're currently working on, but that's just an idea on where we are with regards to the back office area. We've then got a manual invoice option as well, and a manual credit option that are also included, that we'll do as part of works over the coming sprints, and then we've got payments area to move on to, which will be very similar to essentially the reverse kind of scenario in respect to the items above. So that's progress to date with regards to the back office area. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 19.08.01, and as always that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.